Hi everyone, welcome to my session where today I'm telling you all of my tips and tricks as to how to make the best anchor charts or math instructional posters for your classroom, as well as how to make some quick digital versions that you can use if you are doing remote learning or if you want to just kind of send your students some fun instructional posters online. So the first thing I want to share with you are all of the amazing supplies that I use to make my charts. First thing you definitely need whenever you're drawing anything out, planning things out, is to have obviously the best pencils ever, right? So I'm a big Ticonderoga pencil fan, and you definitely want as many erasers as possible. Guys, I make so many mistakes when I'm drawing things out, so definitely if you don't have pencils and erasers, you're gonna wanna make sure you grab some. Second thing you definitely need are some of the best markers. Now, I feel like I am a marker fiend. I buy way too many. I've gone through a lot, and I've really figured out which ones work best for me to make a really good poster that's going to last. The ink is not gonna fade. It's not going to be dull. It's gonna be these really dark, perfect impressions that I want to have on my paper. So my ultimate go-to black marker, because a black marker would be the ultimate for drawing your poster out, is to have one of these. It's definitely using a Staples brand marker or a Staples brand marker, or even using any other permanent marker. I also use like some of the School Smart markers. I tend to stay away from big Sharpie markers only because they bleed so much. These will bleed a little bit through the paper, but not as much as some of the Sharpies, so I tend to stay away. The newer Staples brand is this True Red. So if you got this pack, and I'm really excited to open up this pack with you so I could show you how awesome these markers are, they're definitely a good go-to. So after mapping things out in pencil, having eraser, erasing up all the markings, kind of mapping things out, you definitely want to color in your posters, right? So I also tend to use a lot of the Staples brand markers for my colors. Like, see, these are some of the really super basic colors, but Mr. Sketch markers are a huge marker that I go to for all of my fun colors. So like my pinks, my purples, the greens. I really always love a light green, like there's a neon green. I always feel like that shows up really nicely on the posters, and so I kind of always have that ready to go. The last kind of marker that I feel is always awesome for any kind of posters are just your basic Crayolas. Crayolas always fill in so nicely. If you get like the big thick ones and you don't use the thin ones, and you kind of use the marker on the side, you're gonna get a really thick stroke on the paper, and it's gonna fill in pretty bold. I've used Crayolas a lot. The last major supply you want for your anchor charts is binder rings to hang them easily onto hooks. Now I happen to have two hooks that are on top of my chalkboard, so it's really easy in my classroom to just put my anchor charts on them, but I always put these binder rings through the holes in the chart paper. So these are massive. They are 3-inch binder rings. They're kind of no joke, but these are my buddies. I use them all the time. I also have these ones that are a little smaller. I think these are 2-inch binder rings, but I'm going to show you in just a moment where these binder rings actually go and why you definitely want them for your charts. So pencils, erasers, your favorite markers. I showed you some of my favorite markers, and definitely those binder rings are the things that you need. I have two different types of brands of anchor chart paper that I usually buy. You can buy them in Staples, Amazon, any of those school supply websites. One brand that I like to use is the Pacon brand or Pacon brand, and I also like to use the School Smart brand as well. You can see how big it is. It says that these are 24 inches by 32 inches. You get 25 sheets in a ream here, and they have holes at the top, which is where I put those binder rings that I showed you before. And these then go perfectly on a hook that you would have like on your wall, and I'll show you the hook that I have here in my office. Usually, since these chart papers come with 25 sheets, I usually plan out that I can get about 20 anchor charts done, usually because I always like to take one of the sheets of the 25 and put put it underneath the other sheet that I'm drawing on, just in case there's any kind of marker bleed. I kind of have that one sheet that I keep reusing. I also figure I'm gonna have a few sheets where I mess up so badly that I rip it off and I just kind of toss it and I don't look at it. So I would say a 25 sheet pack is gonna get you about 20 good anchor charts. I also never tear good anchor charts out of this. It's already bound. I just flip onto the next page and I save them from year to year. So these are definitely the brands to get. So now, even though I'm in my office at home and I'm not in my classroom at school, where I said there's 2 hooks on top of my chalkboard, it's really easy when you put the binder rings through your chart paper to just get ready. I drilled in 2 holes and hooks into my wall, and then I would hang it up here. So if this was my classroom, I could have my chart perfectly good to go. Then it's super easy to take it down. You would have to remove the binder rings and then flip over to the next page, put the hooks back through, hang it up, and you're ready for the next day. And that's usually what I do when I have my anchor charts in my classroom. I have the next chart for the next day ready to go, or I keep a chart up for a few days. It really depends on what the topics are. Okay, so we're ready to make our first anchor chart, and you of course have options. You could go ahead and hang this paper right on your wall if you feel like it's easier for you to write vertically. I tend to like to lay the paper flat on a table. If I'm in my classroom, I kind of put a couple desks together, or I find an empty table and I lay the paper down flat. It's usually my preference to go to, but you can certainly write as you hang up if that's easier for you. I took the rings out and I turned to the very first page. Now, because this is a blank chart, a beautiful new set of paper to work with, I know that my second page is going to get a little bit of bleed through. So after I make this first chart and I have a little bit of bleed through on my second page here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rip that page out. I'm gonna fold it and I'm gonna kind of put it somewhere safe, so it's always my go-to page that I put under each chart. That way, if there's any bleed through, I'm not ruining a lot of pages, I'm just reusing that one bleed through page. The tools that I definitely need, I told you guys, you definitely use pencil. I never make a chart just by writing with marker. I'm gonna definitely make mistakes. No matter how many charts I've made, I'm definitely gonna make a mistake. And I'm a huge fan of block erasers. They are my go-to, so I definitely encourage you to do the same. So what I wanna show you is a couple of different strategies for kind of setting up the template for different designs. I'm not gonna fill it in with so much content because I wanna leave that for you, and I'm gonna show you some other ideas that you can do, but I really wanna show you some of the good formatting. So let's take a look. Okay guys, so I've decided that I'm gonna make a chart where I'm gonna have a nice title in the center. It's going to say linear equations, and then I'm going to shoot off 4 different places, 2 on top and 2 on the bottom, of 4 different forms that I want to do. So I definitely want to have the title in the center. I could have the title on top, but it really plays out nicely if my title is in the center this time. And when I write linear equations, I'm going to choose to mix up my fonts. So the word linear is going to go right here, and I'm going to put it into my like boxy bubble print. And then I'm going to write equations underneath it in more of a script. You can mix it up. It really doesn't matter what you do. You can put them all in script. You can put them all in block print. Now, what I will generally do is I'll say, okay, linear. It's 6 letters, so I know I need 3 letters and 3 letters. So I might mark out 6 places just kind of across the paper to see where I need to put them. Then lightly with my pencil, you always want to draw lightly because you want to be able to erase if you need to. Okay, I'm going to start writing out my word linear. So L. You can also change up casing. Some of you might not like that, but I tend to like to change up my casing just because it looks kind of funky. Okay. The more practice you get making bubble letters, the better. I feel like this is what I spent so much of my elementary school years doing, was writing in bubble letters, and now it's finally paying off. I'm gonna make my bubble letters, and they're not perfect, but I also know that when I go over these letters with my black marker, it definitely turns out much better. I'm gonna write out linear. Again, not the best. I think I can make my L a little bigger, so I'm gonna go back and do that. Okay, and then the eraser is obviously gonna be my best friend. And now I wanna write equations, but let's say I want equations to look kind of fancy. So I'm going to start with like a big kind of curve here and then make my E. Now the trick with making cursive look fancy on a poster is don't be afraid to pick up your pencil each time and write each letter separately. So I'm not gonna perfectly join the Q. I'm gonna make the Q separate and then stop it so that I can then make my U separately. A separate. The trick, something nice with the T, is to kind of make it drip a little longer. I, here's how I make my O, and a separate N. Notice I keep pulling the pencil off the paper. And then there's a couple different ways to make S's. I like to make my S's look like this. And that looks pretty good. Now, the trick with making script letters on paper really pop is everywhere you would have had a downstroke in your script, you're going to start at the top and make an extra chunk there. That little chunk there is what you're gonna color in with the marker after, and it's gonna give that fancy like fake calligraphy effect. So in my Q, I would put that extra chunk of a line there. In the downstroke of the Q, I make that stroke there. U. Now in the A, every downstroke. The T, notice I didn't cross my T yet. That's the last thing I would do. I. O has two parts, so the curve and then this part here. The N. And then the S. You can already see it's starting to look much fancier. You could do like a curl here with the T. I generally like to do a line. It is going to kind of intersect my dot for my I, but that should look pretty good. Now I have 4 parts to this that I want to branch out. So I purposely left almost an equal amount of space on the top and the bottom. I'm going to grab a ruler because a ruler is always your friend. Okay, and I'm going to simply branch out really lightly just in case I need to change things. I'm going to branch out as symmetrically as I can. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to fill in what I know I want inside of each box, and then I erase it after the fact. And I'll explain why I do that in just a moment. But okay, so the first one here, I'm going to write out, and let me just move my paper down, and plus that'll let you see it a little bit better, is I'm going to start writing direct variation. And I'm writing it in just regular print, nothing script, no bubble letters, and I'm going to put my equation, y equals kx. After I write that, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to make sure I have enough space for the next one as well, which it looks like I do. So the next one I'm going to write is slope, intercept, form. And then I'm going to write out y equals mx plus b. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Then down here at the bottom, I'm going to write standard form and ax plus by equals c. And then my last one I'm going to write, okay, and then my last one I'm going to write point, slope, form, And then I'm gonna write y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Now that everything's mapped out the way you want it to be, you're gonna wanna take your eraser and just start erasing any of the pencil markings that you might have made before. And you could always do this at the very end, but usually I like to start erasing after I've done my title, just so I get a clearer picture. And I don't ever fill in the letters and color things in until the very, very end, once I've used all the black marker first. Something else that I wanna show you is that I might look at this figure and say, okay, it says direct variation y equals kx, slope-intercept form y equals mx plus b. But maybe I want it not to just be so direct, text, equation, text, equation. Sometimes I like to add just some kind of polygon feature around it, just to give it some more dimension. So there I just sketched like a light trapezoid. Maybe to play into that, I'll make some kind of trapezoid over here. And maybe it, looks completely different, but it's just to kind of block things up. And that's, of course, your choice. But I'm gonna show you what that would look like. I'm gonna go ahead and go over that with marker, just so I have now like these defined spaces. Okay, so you're gonna see I'm not gonna use a ruler. Sometimes I like to live dangerously. Sometimes it doesn't come out perfectly, but that's okay. I'm always fine with that. A little whiteout always goes a long way as well. Just gonna clean that part up. We're good. Then this one here. Again, you might say to yourself, you know what, Rory, I would have not put these boxes around it, and that's fine. When you do see the final product though, it does definitely make an impact. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing at the bottom. Okay, standard form. Again, I always draw everything out in pencil first. And then my point slope form. Okay. Making charts is something that's so therapeutic to me as well. You might be like, you know what, I really like to draw, but making charts is kind of stressful. That's okay. There's so many pre-made things you can find online. They don't have to be beautiful looking. That doesn't mean your students are gonna necessarily learn more. It's just an extra resource for your classroom so that students have something else to look for help. Usually when we're doing some kind of task card activity, I might say to my students, you know what? If you're unsure or you forget, take a look at the anchor chart, and it's that focal point and it's there for what they need. So not only do I use it when I'm teaching the direct instruction, but I'm also using it as a reference point during other activities, which I think is always the biggest deal. Okay, so now what I think I'm gonna do is, because I do like some color coding, but I'm not gonna go too crazy, is I might go back with my black marker. I might go over my text here, direct, variation, slope, intercept, form. I feel like I'm in school, just laying on the floor, drawing in my happy place. Standard form. You can see just nice text. So I'm mixing up my text, right? I have bubble, I have script, fancy script. I have my regular text. Again, I'm not always writing over exactly what I did in pencil because I want those just to be my guide. And you know what? Based on the way this looks right now, if I erase everything that's in pencil, especially if I erase these formulas, which I know I'm gonna go over in anyway, this would be the perfect layout to fill in with students in your classroom. This is just that like black and white, empty template, ready to go. And then of course, coloring everything in, you know what ends up happening, how it's gonna look, it's gonna pop like some of those other charts that I showed you before. So now I just took that chart where I just erased everything, I hung it up on my wall. I'm gonna take a picture of it right now so I kind of save this moment of what it looks like in this form. And again, I could leave it up here in my classroom. I could fill it in with my students. I could laminate this whole chart so I could fill it in with Expo marker and then erase after and fill it in with my next class. It's completely up to you. Okay, I picked out some of my best colors, things that I like in my color scheme for all of my posters, and I'm gonna color this bad boy in now, what it would look like completely done. Okay, I just colored it in, added some more information, and this is what a finished product might look like. You might decide to add a lot more, you might decide to take some things out, rearrange some things, but this is the general idea. So if I was teaching linear equations over the course of a week, this would be my reference point. I would go to it. I might have other charts that have more accurate information or specific information rather about standard form, maybe about how to find the x and y intercept for graphing, point slope form, maybe about for rearranging I would have a separate chart, and I would have up on my board whatever I could possibly need. Now for remote learning, I could make this chart, I could take a video of it and explain all the parts of the chart, and I can even send my students a picture of it as a digital version for them to have. Okay, so now that this chart is completely done, I just showed you what it would look like if I was to hang it up. What I would simply do is I would lay it back down. I would take out the hooks. I'm gonna check to see what my second page looks like. You can see on the second page, I hope you can see on this camera, there are some black dots, and these black dots are from the bleed through from my other page. So what I'll do, like I mentioned before, is I'll tear out the second page, and I'll use that to be the bleed through page for my other charts. So let's say I wanted to create a brand new anchor chart on my next page. I'm gonna take the page that I just ripped out, I'm gonna put it underneath, I'm going to lay my clean paper above it, I'm gonna flip back the chart that we just created together, and I'm gonna lay it flat, and it's gonna be all ready for a brand new chart. When you use this method of making a chart and then just keeping it in the binding, you're never gonna worry about where are my other charts, how do I store them, how do I keep them from not curling or getting ruined. It's just automatically still gonna be in the original, casing. I don't ever take the cover page off or the hard backing, and then you're good to go. And then it's super easy to store in like the back of a closet. You can lay it flat on top of a table. You can even put things on top of it, and your paper is going to stay absolutely perfect the entire time. So what I want to show you next is I want to show you some other possible lettering styles or layouts that you can do. The other chart, I had a title right in the center, but a lot of my charts, my go-to is definitely to put a title right at the top. So I'm going to move my paper over just so I can write on it a little better. Again, always have your pencils and your block eraser ready to go. My ultimate go-to every single time. All right, so let's say I wanted to make a new title, and for this chart, my title is going to be Simplifying Radicals. So let's say I wanted to make that title. In my other title, I did a block, case, and then script. In this one, I'm gonna show you what it would look like if you did it the other way around. You had a nice script title, beginning, and then block letters after. So, Simplifying Radicals. Remember, when you're drawing out in script on a chart and you want it to look really nice, you definitely want to make sure that you kind of map out how your letters are going to be first. So I'm going to do like an exaggerated S, I, M P L I F Y I N G. Have I misspelled things before? Yes, 100 times. So don't feel like it's always got to be completely perfect. And then radicals underneath are, I can already start to think I maybe should have made my R a little bit moved over. So you know what? I'm just going to erase this. Always better to write lightly with your pencil so that you never have any issues later on and it's not super obvious. So I'm going to start my R over here so I can make my letters as big as I want. Now we all have our different styles, again, like how we write our capital letters. You don't have to do bubble letters. It's just something I generally always do. That's better. I could totally tell that my word was not going to fit. And again, this would be a nice title, and then I can fill in anything underneath it. I'm just going to show you again how I go over things. So as I was just coloring this in, I decided to spruce it up, actually put my radical symbol there over the word radicals, and it's just a nice addition to a title for sure, and students are definitely going to remember that. So you can have a really basic title, you can make them fancy, you can add a little math twist or flair to it and really make a chart that when your students look up in your classroom or are looking around, they're definitely going to see things that they remember, which is the whole point. I really hope you were just able to pick up on some easy tips and tricks for making really nice looking anchor charts for your classroom. And now I'm going to show you how you can use some of my fonts of my handwriting to also make some really good digital versions where you don't need to draw anything, you can just place the text instead. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what it would look like if you wanted to create some digital charts, kind of in the same exact format. They may be a little difficult to manipulate, and you don't have obviously as much freedom as just handwriting unless you're working off of an iPad or you have a stylus. But I'm giving you a few of my favorite fonts that I've created so that you can try to create your own or even use my fonts to help you actually draw out your own anchor charts if you like the way my writing is. So the first thing I'm going to show you are the fonts that I'm giving you in this set. Okay, the first one is called RY Function rather. So this is what RY Function looks like, and it's basically my big bubble handwriting. It's basically what my bubble handwriting looks like. So you are going to get this font. You could take a page. I'm in PowerPoint. I do everything in PowerPoint. And you might, write out simplifying. Oops. And then another font that I'm giving you is RY Function Filled. So RY Function Filled is that same bubble font, but already filled in. So you might say simplifying radicals. And you could have your title like that. Another font that you're getting is called RY Monomial. And you can see it's this nice script font, and you could totally use that. You could say, you're simplifying a radical and maybe make that much larger. So instead of having that, you could swap it out with this simplifying radicals, which is pretty awesome. Not only are you getting these 4 fonts, but I am giving you one more font. It's called RY Simple Solver. It is my most basic, just print font. So these are the fonts that you are getting. So you could make your physical anchor charts, or if you feel like, handwriting is just not going to look exactly the way you want it, you can totally use my fonts. You can make a
visual one on a piece of paper, your own little mini anchor chart, and send it to your students for remote learning.
Well, that's it. Thank you so much for joining me in this session all about how to create some meaningful anchor charts for your classroom. If you ever have any questions about anything, you can always reach me on my Instagram page, I Teach Algebra, or you can always email me at iteachalgebratpt@gmail.com. All of my anchor charts that I've actually created for middle school levels, algebra, and geometry are actually already available in my TPT store. It includes the outline template, which is just black and white ready for you to fill in, as well as the final version that you can simply print, or you can even print directly onto poster paper and put up in your classroom, or even project onto poster paper and simply trace and create your own. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.